the Total Game Basketball Academy podcast, hosted by Tony J. Coleman, sports and education consultant. Our focus is to educate and support families of student athletes as they navigate through the recruiting process, the NIL, and life after sports. Subscribe to our YouTube channel at Tony Coleman TGBA. And now, here's Tony.
Well, good morning and welcome to another episode on the Total Game Sports Media Podcast. I am your host, Tony Coleman, and this morning I have with me on the panel, I have Rob Johnson, a former D1 standout at the University of Delaware. He played professional basketball overseas for many years. After his playing days, he came back and he worked at the Boys and Girls Club as a director, educating young people. He works as a high school principal. He currently has a son, Rob Johnson Jr., who plays football, Division I football, in the Big Ten Conference at Rutgers University. I also have Jelani Ghana, former All-American standout point guard at Philadelphia University, admissions director, Westchester University, 76ers executive, Chester County Director for Student Advancement, CEO, Pro Sports, Community Consultants, and current administrator for Cheney University. We have Mike Rusberg, a Michigan State graduate, played for the iconic Jeff Heathcote and Tom Izzo out of MSU, his brother Sean Rusberg. Mike has over 30 years in corporate America. He's been a mentor to many hundreds of thousands of kids across the country, well connected. He brings a lot of information and background to the platform. We may have some more guys checking in as we go, but we're going to get started today. Last time in part one, saving college sports, we talked about NIL. We talked about the transfer portal. We talked about the impact that it's having on families and institutions with their financials, things of that nature. We touched base on the Scores Act, a new regulation that's in the House currently, waiting for a vote by Congress. We talked about a lot of different things. So we're really going to pick up where we left off. And before we do that, there was one thing that comes to my mind, and Rick is not on here, but he brought it up when we were on last time, and it was about those values and what is it that you're going to be, sharing with your son and your daughter who are participating in sports and are going to the next level. And I want to play a real quick clip, and we're going to come back from the clip. Rob Johnson, I want you to tell me, when we come back, what was it, that you kind of conveyed to your son and your family and your wife. You guys sat down, you guys as a family, you made a decision, on what school RJ was going to attend. How did you come to that conclusion? And, just share that with everybody. And then from there, we're going to get into the Scores Act, a little bit of background on that. Jelani will lead that off. And then we're going to have Mike coming in, with his perspectives on all those different, entities or those different sections and points in that documentation. Okay.
Forming these Parent Plus loans, which I also went and took care of as well, because I realized in unpacking this, the burden, 60% of African-American wealth goes to servicing student loan debt. And first of all, why is it that high? Part of it's because it is the college educated who took out those loans that have higher paying jobs. So those who think, I don't need that degree, you have a higher probability of making a lot more money and being a lot more successful, to say stacking a paper, if you do have a college degree, because it provides access to opportunity. My 20-year-old, and he and I talk about, he's like, Dad, what are your expectations of me? I said, son, in your 20s, I have two expectations. One is to build skills and to develop habits. College does that. Okay. And if you approach it the right way, those skills of critical thinking, analysis, analytics, and then the habits of fulfilling commitments and the habits of engaging with elders, teachers, habits of working together in teams, the habits of thinking about, where do you fit in the construct of your community and how are you supposed to contribute to it? College provides a lot of those frameworks. Now, if you choose to not embrace that, that's one thing. But if you choose to embrace it, it is a highly enriching experience beyond the academic engagement that you have. And so all of that's an important construct in part that our community needs to continue to lean into.
Okay. So, Robbie, if you can elaborate on that, what'd you take from that clip from, Robert Smith? And then also, what was those things that you and your family talked about all through this process of recruiting? How did you come down to the decision to make Rutgers that place for RJ to attend?
Well, good morning, everyone. And thank you, Tony, for inviting me to this podcast. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
All right, good. Yeah, as Tony knows, it was a difficult decision in the beginning, being a former Division I basketball athlete, preparing my son all his, since 3, 4 years old to play basketball in the endless workouts in the backyard, at the Boys and Girls Club, in the playground. It was basketball was his first love. Football was something he did for fun. All right, to change things up. And it was really difficult to convince him to, stay the course and then decide last minute. So, yeah, consulting with Tony, because he was a 2-star athlete as well, was like, man, we don't know what direction to go. But financially, coming from that old school background where, as a student athlete, you didn't get paid to play was a hard concept to grasp because, I wasn't all about the NIL, wasn't all about that. It was more like, man, you given an opportunity to get free education, no matter where it is. I'm not worrying about, and he wasn't worrying about NIL and money and those sorts. But being an educator, having a little bit of financial literacy sense, convincing him there's 15 scholarships in basketball and there's like 115 in football. So the numbers made sense. And when he started really seeing that his ceiling was much higher in football and his offers were a lot bigger for a full ride, and then having low Division I offers, he finally grasped in his spring of senior year that he decided to go the football route. And then the NIL came in after that, after we made that decision. But it was difficult for my wife and I to understand that a 18-year-old was making more money than both of us combined with careers. With pretty decent careers. My wife is a nurse. As Tony mentioned, I'm a high school principal. I was the director of the Boys and Girls Club for 20 years. And our 18-year-old walks in and makes more than both of us combined. So that was a very difficult concept to swallow. And then helping him try to manage that and getting the right people on your team to help manage that kind of money, as well as teaching him financial literacy and not having him go crazy with blowing money, as we all heard all the horror stories. But it took some time, and Tony could tell you it took some time. Like every other day, Tone, what's up, man? Look, this is where we at. This is where we going on. So, definitely appreciate Tony's guidance on that. And him being in the Jersey realm too, it just made sense that the coaches, Greg Schiano was really big on RJ. And when you talk to the head coach, 90% of the time, that usually tells you that's the direction you want to go. So ultimately, he chose Rutgers. His freshman year right now, he's ready going to his first spring ball. We're taking him back today from spring break, and he starts spring ball tomorrow. So just keeping him locked in and having him understand that he can't miss out on his opportunities, right? Can't miss out on his opportunities because he has to change his mindset. We have to help him change his mindset that it's a business at the end of the day. It's a business. And if you stay locked in, these are pennies right now that you get. I mean, we trying to create generational wealth through this NIL process, and so we're trying to get him more, education on that aspect, and not to blow this opportunity.
Yeah, that's good, man. Thanks for sharing that. I just want to ask you one thing, Rob. You guys came up with the decision to go to Rutgers. Now, and we talked about this on part one about the transfer portal and how chaotic it is with a lot of kids transferring. We'll get more and more into it as we talk about the Scores Act and these other things later on. But the thing is to limit the amount of transfers available to the kids. I just want to ask you, and Mike, you can chime in after that. Would you ever consider, or have your family ever talked about, the opportunities that may be afforded you to transfer? Will you be lured out to somewhere else? What's your take on that? What's your spin on that? Because a lot of people are listening to you.
It's Tone. Right. It's an easy it's an easy decision because we live in a moment, and he has to first get on the field. Right. So he's a redshirt freshman. He has an opportunity to potentially be in the starting lineup, be in the 2 deep rotation, but he has to get on the field. So we start there, right? You got to get on the field. You got to stay locked in the classroom, because those are the 2 most important things right now here in the moment. So we haven't even and won't entertain anything about transfer portal or transferring until we see what he could do on the field. He took care of first semester. He made Dean's List, took care of the education piece, and we're proud of him for that, and we want that to continue. Now he has to get focused on getting on the field, staying healthy, staying locked in with his nutrition, so to help reduce any injuries and things like that. So that's our number one goal, right? And then we'll go from there.
Okay. All right, cool. Mike, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, it's so funny that and Rob, I'll call you dad in this instance. A dad that can communicate to a son, that's number one. A lot of dads don't have that place. Either they lost it or they don't know how to play that role. So congratulations there. Robert Smith is talking about himself, talking to his son about, how he would approach school. I hope and pray, Rob, that your son learns that he can put this cell phone away for weeks at a time. That's the part that nobody's ever talking about. Minimize how much you on this. Leave it in the dorm room. Walk around campus. Look at the birds. Talk to random people. Go speak to the people in the cafeteria and the fizz plant and the professors and the business owners around campus. Those folks are there. Some people are there to keep you boxed into the campus. So you want to know who those people are. And some people are allies to help you see what's really going on around the campus. So I'll say this. 1992, I graduated high school. I got to Michigan State my second year of college. And there was one family that owned the entire land base around the university. So think about that. Over 300 acres of land, this one family owned. And on the plane, on the bus, you always see this family. They were Middle Eastern. And so I started making appointments with those people. If you have their attention as an athlete, they will tell you stuff that they won't tell other people. So I challenge you to have your son interview people who just so happen to be on the perimeter of that football team. Interview some of the people that end up in that box. Find out where their offices are. You go with them if you can. Sit down with them and say, how did you guys manage your wealth over the last 100 years? How did you pass down money between your family members and friends? That scholarship, and obviously in conjunction with an NIL deal, get you in some doors to interview people. That's the power of what Robert Smith did in his career. He stayed in the office buildings when those 4 black men put him in a position to go and work for that firm in New York. He stayed all night long working on projects. I hope your son pulls all-nighters to study outside of his curriculum. I hope he learns to study international business, international marketplaces, the history of some of these things going on between South America, North America, different places in Europe, many, many different countries across Africa, the Middle East. There's a lot of information to take in. He just got to manage this, and he's got to manage the people that get too close when he has to rest, you know, whether it's girlfriend, buddies, whatever. So, no, my thought is Robert was speaking to that father-son, and Malachi 4:6 is a Bible scripture that talks about the heart of the son drawing to the dad and the heart of the dad drawing to the son. So I congratulate you, Rob, on being able to stay close to your son, because some people don't get a chance to do that.
That's good.
Appreciate
That's
that.
good.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, good feedback. Good feedback, man. So, without further ado, delay anymore, as we talk about or bring back up the SCORE Act. Of course, all those other components that we talked about: transfer portal, financials, the pay for play, making student athletes employees, mental health, health insurance, all these things are going to be in this discussion moving forward in the SCORE Act. I just want to give a little bit of quick background real quick, and I'm going to turn it over to Professor Jelani to engage us in this SCORE Act, this debate or discussion. All right. Just to give you a little bit of background, the Student Compensation and Opportunity Through Rights and Endorsements, or SCORES Act, is set forth for a vote in the House of Representatives coming up, right? For years, the NCAA, the governing body of collegiate athletics, limited athlete compensation to the cost of education, but the antitrust litigation, Supreme Court decisions, and state legislation paved the way for athletes to receive NIL compensation. The SCORE Act would once again allow the NCAA and other collegiate athletic organizations to limit student athlete compensation by preempting state law and granting broad antitrust immunity, leaving athletes with little legal recourse to challenge rules or collusion that suppress their earnings. All right. So that's a little bit of background. I'm gonna pass the baton and let Brother Jelani continue to engage us more in this thing.
Great discussion, gentlemen. In our prior conversation and the baseline of my remarks, you're going to hear one consistent theme. And it's about opportunity. I want everybody to understand, who are listening to and watching this podcast in the future, Tony, on your platforms, YouTube and others, that what we're talking about is opportunity. And combining the words of Robert Smith and Brother Johnson with his son, I'm going to give you some small tidbits to just kind of anchor kind of where I'm going at. The first thing was with Brother Johnson. Here's what he said. He said, we live in a moment, or in the moment. That's what these young people have. They have a moment. This is not, it can be for the rest of their lives, but only if they seize the opportunity or recognize the moment. And I submit to you that some of the discussion around the SCORE Act seeks to interfere, quote unquote, regulate, which is not always a bad thing, but we have to challenge it and question it, their moment, meaning their opportunity. Now, as families, what you have to do, like Mr. Johnson said, is now, first of all, just recognize, y'all, we got a moment. We don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. So we got to look at everything as a family and begin to develop what we're looking for. So Mr. Smith recognized that as well, and he has these things that he talks about. Now he's talking about, hey, there's an opportunity here, there's a moment here. Now, what are the values statements that we put in this moment?
Yeah.
And this is from a community, not exclusively African American, but especially the African American community, of what's the value that you put in an opportunity, and in this case, college. So listen to what he said. He didn't talk about getting a job. It's a linear, whatever. He said three things that really stood out. And this is the anchor so that the SCORE Act doesn't drag you or push you all over the place. Here's what he said. First thing he said was build skills. Why am I sending my son or daughter to college or to technical school or to the military or any of those things? It's not just to get a job. A job is a byproduct of some other things. But what he said was, I need you to build skills. Not just play football or basketball. That's what's opening the door for you. Not just your amazing trombone player or a concert pianist or you do robotics and STEM and that opened the door. But it's really to, number one, build skills. The second thing, and this was really important, to develop habits. To develop habits. This is the problem that Americans face in general and our community faces in particular is bad habits, consistency. What do I do over and over and over again? And it's ironic because we're all former high-level athletes, and that's the one thing we talk about trying to develop in the playing field of competition, are habits, where it becomes second nature, muscle memory. But in a broader perspective, as you're seeking and trying to seize and expand opportunity, believe it or not, the ability to sustain and maintain opportunity or build what Mr. Johnson said was generational wealth does not happen by luck. It happens by building skills and developing habits. Like you were saying, Mike, that he went back and he started doing some study. This is all habit forming. The third thing he said is that by virtue of all of that, and this is really important for the African American community, by virtue of building skills, by virtue of developing habits, it allows you to understand, this is where we miss the ball, where you fit in your community. And so what happens is we got all these people generating tremendous money, but they don't see where they fit or their role in our community. So a lot of African American institutions are still overly reliant on government and can't seek their own path to prepare their students to be stalwarts and solid members of the community. And what they're constantly doing is asking the government, the same government, by the way, that didn't pay them for over 246 years, whatever, Jim Crow, whatever, to help them do all these things. Number three, generational wealth. We hear this term a lot. Let me tell you something. Colleges, universities, NBA, NFL, baseball, they don't have any obligation to help you build generational wealth. And I always say we got to be careful that becomes a buzzword. First of all, Tony, Mike, Rob, if somebody said to me, I'm going to give you just use $1 million. If you can't live off $1 million, something's wrong with you. See, there's something going on in our mindset, that 500 grand, no, that should be generational. And you should be able to expand that, as Mr. Smith and others have done, if you have built the skills and you develop the habits, and then you know where you fit in your community. Number 5, spring ball. Mr. Johnson said, we got the academic piece. That means to me, he's taking care of the opportunity. He got his grades up. Now it's spring ball. Now, back in the day, an athlete could go back into the general population. He could be a regular student again. But guess what the adults said? We want you to play Spring ball. Now, yes, it's developing you, but that's taking more of your time to now maybe pick your grades up. It's not that there's not some benefits there, but the reality is it's preparing that product of which you are a laborer in for a better outcome for TV and all that kind of stuff. I'm not here to complain about it. I'm here to recognize it, that you're supposed to be a student athlete, but we continue to limit and put pressures on the student side because that's not really their goal. And I'm saying we've got to recognize it and we've got to exploit it to our advantage. And then also what we've all said is that this is a business. We didn't make college sports, and I said this in our last episode, we didn't make college sports a major billion-dollar business. This is a part of the American ethos. And capitalism and the commercialization and commodification of human beings and opportunity is what they do. And I'm not saying it's all bad if you've built skills, if you've developed habits, and you know where you fit in your community. And so all of that is connected to my last 30 seconds on the SCORES Act that Tony mentioned, because when you read it, what it says is, number one, the first thing, listen to me, y'all, aiming to regulate.
Yeah, keyword.
Aiming to regulate. Now, what that says to me, even though I'm not anti-regulation, what that says to me is, this could mean it might curb the what? Opportunity. That's the key. See, when you're trying to regulate something, you're trying to put some barriers, possible barriers. And again, not all barriers are bad. Now, what is it trying to regulate? Name, image, and likeness deals for the athletes. So respectfully, and I'm just throwing some names out, Rick Pitino, ain't nobody talking about regulating his NIL. Isn't the Alabama coach Nick Saban and prime coach on the commercials, Aflac. Nobody's talking about regulating their name and likeness and deals. Okay. Nobody's talking about, this is the SCORE Act, setting national standards for them. You've got to remember that when you go to college, you are technically an adult. Your parents and and Mr. Johnson knows he can't get information on his son or daughter unless he has a FERPA waiver. So these are adults, that are participating in the moment. This is their moment. Tony, Mike, when we were in school, we were really, even though we've reestablished ourselves, thank goodness too, because of the skills we built and the habits we developed. But when we were in college, we were kind of in our zenith of opportunity. We just weren't able to take advantage of it, So what this talks about is setting a national standard, not for Pitino, you know what I'm saying? Not for Hurley, you know what I'm saying? Not for Coach Thompson or Coach Chaney, God rest their souls. It's for the student athletes. And it says, we're going to try to do these things. And then it also says it seeks to codify or codify, depending on how you pronounce it, NIL agreements, cap free agent fees, and then there's some requirements for the institution to develop academic support and all that, which they're already doing. And then last but not least, and this is the part that, again, we have to question, we got to raise these questions, we got to look at it, is it says it seeks to establish a uniform federal framework for college sports. And let me tell you why that's troubling.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's the end. We got to think about it, but it's troubling because, when you do college admissions, I've been in that arena, college retention, there are some standards, but I remember John Chaney and John Thompson challenging those standards. So what were the standards when we were playing SAT, ACT? They had no problem with the SAT or ACT. What their problem was the national standard that institutions utilized to make decisions on who was worthy of an opportunity for college. What Coach Thompson and what Coach Chaney said, I got no problem with the SAT, but you're determining either their admissibility or, most importantly in sports, you're determining their eligibility to participate in an extracurricular activity based on a standardized test scores. I'm not getting into all the bias towards women or minorities, different discussion. It's just who told you that you could make that decision? This is why I'm concerned about the Scores Act and the regulation. Somebody said, oh, Tony, because you got a 780, or Mike, because you got an 810, Jelani, because you got an 815 or whatever on your SAT score, that you can't play college football, softball, baseball, swimming. Now, you can do the Glee Club, you can do gospel, you can do all those other things. Well, wait a minute, aren't those extracurricular activities as well? And some of those even can determine scholarship. But somebody set that standard, aka regulate. So the setting of the standard to me sounds like it could impose on the opportunity for people. And so I know we're going to get into it, and it was a little bit of a longer dissertation, but I just want to set the table of why the Scores Act and discussions like this are so important. And for families like Mr. Johnson and those like Tony, they're going to look at the TGBA podcast and understand there's a lot of conversations around it. We're going to talk about what you as a family might want to consider doing, but you got to understand what's up against. To me, what we never want to do is limit a person's opportunity. Do we want to protect them against the snakes, the snake oil salespersons, and all of that? Of course we do. And institutions can play a vital role in things like you mentioned, Tony, financial literacy, having compliance officers make sure that the student understands his or her rights, work with there's a lot of things that because we do that anyway, in financial aid, in the bursar's office, in housing, we got counselors, to make sure the well-being and stuff like that. But I always get concerned with these regulations and national standards because, again, they're talking about Robbie's son, and they're not, listen to me, they're talking about Robbie's son and not his coach.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to stop right there.
Yeah. I mean, you laid that out really, really nicely. And this is the problem, man, that, we will see should this bill be passed, because they're going to make sure that things are in place for them to get back to that, that power and that control. And, some of the things that are listed in there, it's about a 30-page bill with all kinds of, jargon in there. A few things that I kind of agree with, I can go with in this act. For example, minimizing the amount of percent of money that the agent can withhold from the student athlete. Is a limit of 5% as opposed to these guys are getting 20% or more, and they're not conveying that to the athlete and their family. And as a result of that, they're getting caught with the bag of paying the taxes on the money. You know what I mean? So, for example, they get like a couple $100,000, NIL deal from the school, and they get their 20% off the top, and they don't tell the student athlete that, you're getting caught. We're taking out 20% of that 200, but you're paying taxes on a full 200 after we got our 20%. They're not telling them that. So I think having some guidelines for the agents, I think that's good. I think it's good that you must, as an institution, and Jelani, you alluded to this, that this is something that they have to do anyway, provide health insurance and academic support. Now they have to provide mental health too, because this is a big thing. And Mike, I'm sure you'll get a chance to, speak on that part. Title IX, the power stability for them. But, even beyond that, there's just so many parts in there that they want to make sure that the student athlete is not listed as an employee. I think they're afraid of that. The biggest thing for me with the SCORE Act that I really, really don't like is that they want to be exempt. They want to be exempt from the Antitrust Act that gives the rights to the athletes and the students, so that you can dictate policy, you can create, all these rules and regs to govern and not be accountable or just disregard the rights coming from the Sherman Antitrust Act for the student athlete. That part I don't like, So there's a lot of things for discussion and agreement and disagreement, as it relates to this SCORE Act. And man, it's just I think that they have shot themselves in the foot. And I say they, the NCAA, for one. Once you did the things that you did, and then the court said, okay, now you're going to have to share the revenue, right? So now, if you're sharing revenue of 22% of your annual intake, or $20 million plus dollars, now you're running into a dilemma with all the other deficits that you placed your institution in. Now we're talking about your budgeting. I question these institutions. They should be held accountable by law on how they regulate and implement their annual budgets. You talked about this, Jelani, last time in part one. Who told you to go build these new stadiums that cost $500 million and all these other kind of crazy figures? You're paying coaches, and Mike, and I'm sure I want you to speak on this too, because the salaries of coaches have been, really crazy, multi-million-dollar contracts over 10, 15, 20 years or whatever. That's taken away from your budget. You're pulling funds from other parts of the institution into athletics to cover all the deficits that you placed on yourself. But now you don't want to pay the kids. Now there's a conflict even with the collective and the institution NIL. So what they're doing, I'll just say this one last thing and then I'll let you go, Mike. With that 22%, let's say a kid is going to get $500K, but you're limited on giving him the $500K. You may give him $300 because you have this 22% cap. But now you rely on the collective to come in to pay the other $200,000 to cover that, right? But now we have all of these deals on the table, and these kids are not getting their money because it has to be approved through the collective or third party. It has to be approved on how they give the money to the student athlete. It has to be a legitimate company that you're performing some type of service for or ad for, whatever, for it to go through and be approved. So they're being overwhelmed with the amount of deals coming through for approval. So in the meantime, these student athletes are sitting back. Man, I only got half of my money. They're still waiting for their money.
Yeah, there's I'd say we definitely, as a part of this forum and any forum we're outside of this, I want us to be very, very clear. These are men and women. We don't need to call them anything else. They're not children. They're men and women. They're not kids. They're men and women. Because in many other countries at 12 years old, you could be considered an adult because of the things that have gone on in society, especially going from an agricultural to industrial, and now we're in a tech environment. There are young people that might be 15, 16 years old building things that, like Rob said, his son happens to be in a sport environment, which we're talking about. He can drive more income than both his parents just because of the nature of the environment. So for these young women and young men, these adults, we have to really, really make sure that we connect the historical power that is already in place. There's no school that just got created. So that means there's a board. If you ever study the conversations of the board of a university, they talk about each category of the school. Sports is only one of them. When they look at their role and position in that educational environment, which is an institution, which is a corporation, they set rules up that will never allow an athlete or a parent to ever be in power. What happened with the influx of the decision of NIL is you saw power shifting very fast, very quick. Now that abusive coach, that abusive trainer, that abusive professor, that abusive sponsor, that abusive, they lost their power. So then they're like, wait a minute, I used to could tell them they got to eat at my restaurant. Now they're going to another restaurant. Hey, school, do something about that. Hey, coach, I used to have that guy come over and sign autographs at my elementary school that I still go to. Now he don't want to come. What you going to do about that? Right? We are still talking about the context of slavery behavior. These are overseer, right? These are overseer processes of manipulation. So you have the legality of NIL, but you still have the power structure of a university. That university is nothing different than a plantation. It's nothing different. So now, if that is how they want to run the university, we have to get into the environment and get out of the environment intelligently. Which means, hey, athletes, when they stick a microphone in your face, don't say certain things. Because what's happening is everything's being compiled against you. Right? You rather say no comment if you're not ready to be interviewed, right? There are still coaches that have friends, and we know one up north from where we graduated, that have conversations with their peers about the players as if they were animals, okay? They talk about some of these young men and young women as if they're animals. We still in them conversations. So when they're standing around the gyms and standing around the fields and they're at home and they're throwing these lavish parties and they're inviting all the alumni players coming around, we look at each other like, wait a minute. There's enough money. They can say, hey, anybody who ever played at the school in the past 50 years, here's what we're going to do for you. They ain't doing that. So now it's just a decision of saying, hey, athlete of today that might get some money, we're going to break down your money so you get less of it, even though the monopoly of the NCAA took everything in the past, right? So we have to be very, very, very clear. If I'm 18 to 22 years old, that history of NCAA didn't just go away, right? I would instill a dad like Rob to sit down and have them hard conversations. Son, you see that building over there they built? Your name ain't on it, is it? You see that facility over there they built? Your name ain't on it, is it? Steve Smith put money back in Michigan State to honor his mom. That gave him access to what? Leadership conversations. Once he had professional-like money. That let him in some rooms to hear. So some players, if they can be prepared for that, like a Robert Smith, you have to get in the room and listen to what they're really saying. A lot of people like, I don't want to do that. I just want to go play.
Nah, if I can piggyback, that's a great point.
Go ahead, John.
And I'm going to share some data with you real quick. Again, opportunity. What does regulation mean? Does it or can it curtail opportunity, or is it a safeguard? You know, it's not one way or the other. I think there can be some combination of those, but we always have to be careful of that. The plantation mentality. I put some of that in the chat if you guys remember back in the day with Harry Edwards, and so I got two things I want to say. First of all, I've talked about the national standard. I was talking about SATs and all that, and again, what John Chaney, John Thompson, and many others were saying was, Notre Dame, you can have whatever standards you want. But why are you stopping me from having the standard that I wanted my institution? Because while there's some overall standards, but each institution is like a sovereign country. So rather than challenge the chancellor of this institution and whatever, or stick to what your guidelines are, the problem with regulation or the standard is it becomes universalized. Now you're telling everybody. And that's what John Chaney had a problem with. Temple, as an example, is different than, say, the University of Penn. They're both in Philly, but they're different institutions. So Temple was never trying to tell the University of Penn or even its sister school, Penn State, who to recruit or whatever, or what the criteria was by which they recruited their students. They said, do whatever you want. But we operate in a different space. And we want to be able to compete like everybody else in intercollegiate. Oh, no, you can't do that because you got Michael Respert on your team and he only got a 780 SAT. And so Temple would say, well, what the hell difference does that make? We felt, based on meeting Michael and his looking at his grades and maybe talking to his family, that he would be a good fit for our institution. His values align with our institutional values, whatever. And we want to give him an opportunity. What the hell do you got to do with that, Penn? Do you? Well, my guys want to go play basketball. No problem. Let them go play basketball. So does my guy. And they can compete. Well, it's not fair because your guy, what's him scoring a 780 on the SAT got to do with him playing basketball? Well, those national standards, that regulation that the NCAA put in, curtail Michael's opportunity based on Notre Dame or UVA or Cal Berkeley or an Ivy. Yep. That to me, that's an overstep of their power under the guise of we want to prepare them for college, this, that, and the third. And when you listen to and read the documents from the ETS, which was the Educational Testing Service that administered and developed the standardized test, ACT or ACT, they said those are great barometers that can engage in your discussions on where a student might fall in their first year. However, it should not be the number one criteria by which you base your admission standards on, because not everybody's a good test takers. Scholarships across the board were oftentimes given based on SAT or ACT scores, when most of the evidence said that you can basically, even though there's a lot of grade inflation, the high school transcript grades 9 through 12 are the better indicator, along with course selection, rigor of the course, which oftentimes meant that women really outperformed men in the classroom in even the most vigorous classes. But because the power said we're going to award scholarships based on SAT or ACT scores, you saw more men getting these awards. So again, we're talking about power. We're talking about standards, things that can curtail opportunity. Nobody's telling Notre Dame, nor should they tell Notre Dame or Kentucky or Messiah College or the community college who to admit. They got enough PhDs, EDDs, HIJK, LMNOPs at their school to make a cogent decision on who is admissible to their institutions. But again, as we've all said, America has decided to commercialize and commodify athletics. And when money gets involved, and especially when money trickles down to the employees, these young adults that you're referencing, Michael, now all of a sudden everybody wants to pretend like they're concerned about the student. And I do believe that there are many people, including coaches, that really do care about the young people. But if you cannot care about them at the expense of their ability to seize the moment, as Mr. Robbie said. So let me share one last thing about something, Tony, you mentioned, and Mike, you mentioned, and Tony, you talked about this as part of the scores. This idea of who gets to represent the prospective athlete, student or otherwise. And this notion, and I understand the regulation. And so, again, my theme song, James Brown, I don't want nobody to give me nothing. Just open up the door. I'll get it myself. That's how I operate, which means our job is to inform the public. You have rights and you have responsibilities. And if you don't want to forfeit your responsibilities, to know your rights, because somebody will come in and they will regulate your ability, and you don't want that to happen. So our job is to try to inform and educate parents about certain percentages that so-called representatives can take. Our job, and the schools can help us with this, is to talk about taxes. But that's still your responsibility, Mr. Johnson. For you, I don't need Rutgers to do that.
Yeah.
I don't need Rutgers to say, well, your agent should only get 3%, 4%, 5%, or whatever. I don't need that law. I need you to say what you're asking for is too much. I'm going to go to Mr. Coleman to represent me. The other part of that is always remember that established institutions always have a massive advantage when it comes to the marketplace.
Yes.
Which, Lonnie, what do you mean? When I got into the business of representing athletes, and I'm a prime example of this, so I know this firsthand. And there was already for, a half a century, agents, representatives. Tony, when you had yours when you played in college, that, as parents, you want to maximize your opportunity, like you said, Mike. You want to seize the moment, like Mr. Johnson said. So back when we were growing up, there were few, if any, African American representatives, so-called agents, okay, and definitely few women. So if your son or daughter made it, if you will, or had the opportunity, what we would do is we'd bypass all the Thurgood Marshalls, we'd bypass all the Johnny Cochrans, we bypass Maverick and Richie Paul and all of those guys to go to somebody from outside the community. Despite all the lawyers that we have, people like Mr. Smith who can do because we would say, oh, I can't, I got to go with this person because they can get the maximum dollars for the school. There ain't no black lawyer going to be able to do that. That person, they had a leg up already, and so money continued to go out of the office. You know what John Thompson did with all his guys? He steered all of his Georgetown guys, and Georgetown produced a whole lot of African American lawyers. He steered a whole lot of guys outside the community. I'm saying get the best person, but we were not given a chance because most of the other community had first movers opportunity. They were already in the game. So when there was an opportunity to level the playing field, or listen to me carefully, gentlemen, for the athlete who's really the deal, to say, I'm going to determine who represents me. Clutch Sports. Well, wait a minute. Who's this Richie Paul? Who's this Maverick? These guys, they're not in our group. They ain't signed no agreement or no paper. They didn't take some quote unquote agent's test to see if they were. Who told you that they had to? The man said, if you want to talk to me, talk to him. And I say that because that's how I got into the business. When I got into the business of representing, your buddy E and other guys, I trained them. You don't got to say no to nobody. You just tell them, see that guy right there with the locks? You go talk to him. See, that's where the power lies. And you don't want to forfeit that. So again, going back to the Scores Act, this notion of trying to determine who's eligible, as opposed to us sitting down as a family and saying who's best qualified. See the difference between eligibility and qualifications, because somebody's going to try to say if you're eligible, same with the SAT. No, the individual, the institution can decide if a person is qualified to attend their university. This is supposed to be an extracurricular activity. Last point, if you guys can think about this, there was a charges against coaches, with corruption and bribery. And the other part that I wanted to mention was something that I was reading. Listen to this, guys. Again, we're talking about curtailing the athlete, but not the coaches. Over an 11-year period, college athletics departments, think about this, gentlemen, spent over $500 million in dead money, aka buyouts, for college coaches. As a matter of fact, Texas A&M, they spent over $87 million. And then they start talking about the one-sided contracts that coaches got, like Mel Tucker at Michigan State, ironically. He signed a $95 million deal. Florida State, or I think it was Texas A&M, paid Jimbo Fisher $77 million. But in the same breath, you know what they want to talk about? So-called street agents and how they're influencing college and high school athletes. You guys remember the deal or the conversation with so-called World Wide West. They even got a 30 for 30 on there. Well, who is this world? First of all, who is he? I didn't tell him he could represent guys. Who the hell is he walking into these places like? Now, them other guys can walk wherever the hell they wanted. And trust me, I know, because I was in that space for a decade.
Yeah.
For a decade. They can walk in and get to that top and whatever. I'm saying to you that we have to, in the discussion of this, we've got to make sure that the power to choose and the power to make an educated, competent decision does not rest with the overall body, because we've already got 2 centuries of exploitation, even sometimes under the guise of doing good. We want to get a control over this. And then I'm going to differ with you on one thing. I got this quote. A man or a woman who thinks the same way they thought over 40 years has wasted time in their life. So what? When we're watching March Madness, and that's all we're doing right now, and y'all know ain't nobody not watching March Madness. There's plenty of money to go around. So as much as they talk about the sky is falling out and what's going on with college sports and it's so awful, guess what? They got a gazillion people watching, and these sponsors are trying to throw their money there. So now we're hearing these stories, and I just listened to one the other day, and I think this one young man went to a community. I think he went to, Utah State played, and they had this young man. I think he went to 5 schools all in Utah. 5 schools. He went to a community college and like some other college in Utah, another college in Utah, another college in Utah, and now he's at Utah State, and they played in the tournament. So what? So what? Well, what are the freshmen going to do? They're going to do like any other freshman used to do. They're going to have to wait their turn. See, we got involved with this Fab Five, and everybody thinks they got to play. So who said they got to play freshmen? If they earn it, then they play. If they don't, then they don't. High Point will take them. Winthrop will take them. St. Joe's will take them. There's so many colleges and universities that are out there for freshmen. Now, not everybody going to get this money. They're not ordained to go to Kentucky or North Carolina or Georgia. Who said? There's so many universities out here. There's so much basketball and very good players. As one thing about March Madness, it puts a lot of very good players on display because they labor in the Mountain West, or they labor in the WAC, or they labor in the MAC or the A10. They're not in the SEC that gets all the publicity. They're not in the ACC that gets all the publicity, or the Big East. And so again, people are saying, like John Calipari, well, what are we going to do? And only a fool would recruit freshmen. No. Yes, you're going after the guy that went from one school and became Atlantic 10 Player of the Year, and now you want him at Kentucky. You know why? Because he's developed. And that's what coaches used to do. They used to develop players, but y'all stopped developing them. You started telling, along with Dickie V, you started saying, oh, he's a PTPer. He ain't going to be in college long. Oh, he can't stay. He got to go to the end. And of course, the young man and the mom and dad is listening to that. And of course, they got to go. But y'all open that can of worms, and now you're mad. So my thing is, I could care less how many schools they go to.
Yeah.
What's the rush to get into the professional ranks? Who cares? This is their what? Their moment.
Yeah.
This is their moment. And so let them seize the moment. Now, we want them to get a degree, and they should have to earn those additional years at school. But if they're a full-time student, so what? Let them play. Well, he's 28 years old. So what? Who cares if he's 28? Is he enrolled at the school in a legitimate college degree seeking program? But see, if you question that, now you got to question that school's chancellor. Now you got to question that school's professor. Now you got to question that school's PhDs and EDDs. So instead of doing that, you're going to beat up on the athlete and take away his opportunity. You should be talking to Penn State. You should be talking to Utah Valley State or whatever and saying, well, what's that young man doing there? Last piece is pros, because Calipari mentioned this. And this is the NIL deal. Nobody said, oh, this turn on the TV in March Madness and you got a whole lot of dudes. Think about this, fellas, because we know that a lot of this discussion around NIL, if we're going to keep it honest, and you talked about it, Michael, is because of the prominence of the black athlete. That's the reason why all this money and stuff like this now, all of a sudden, it's a problem. Okay? Now, you watch March Madness, and you got a Kukushkakov and a Kaklinklakluk and a cat coming in there from the places where John Wick is always killing dudes. We're not talking about France. We ain't talking about Belgium. We ain't talking about Spain, Portugal, England. We're talking about over there where John Wick do business. Turkey, Albania. Because those are the cats, Jokic and Luka. Those are the cats that's balling.
Yeah.
And on every team, along with our cousins from the continent, they got so-called international players. Nobody says anything about these guys. Who's looking at their daggone SAT scores and their ACT scores? Nobody's looking at these cats at all. Now, many of them, watch this, y'all, they're enrolled at taxpayer public institutions, which means they're taking an opportunity, the opportunity you're talking about, they're taking it away from American-born players. Look at what's going on in UConn, these guys. They got 3 and 4 dudes from another country. I'm not mad at the other country, even though, Tony, Mike, when you played, they could only have 2 Americans on the team when we were trying to go to Europe. But we've allowed all these guys, America first. We've allowed all these people to come, and I ain't talking about private school like Duke. I'm talking about University of Georgia, These are taxpayer institutions. And they got 3 and 4 dudes from different parts of the world. And here your son or daughter from either Connecticut or Georgia, Pennsylvania, whatever, or from the 50 so-called United States, they're losing out, not because of the kid transferring from NIL or transferring from school. They're losing out because of a person that's not even a citizen of the country. And nobody's talking about that. That's why you have to broaden the discussion and really get to what this is all about.
Yeah.
And more importantly, we have to empower parents. You make the choice on who represents your son. And you, at the dinner table, like Rob said, or maybe Rick said, man, we sat down at the dinner table. And this is what I tell my son or my daughter. I don't need Mr. NCAA man or woman to do that. I don't need Kamala Harris, Joe Biden, Donald Trump, Obama. I handle that.
Yeah.
I handle who represents me. And I can say if 5% is too much or too little. I'm responsible for the taxes. He's responsible. If he gets 5%, he's responsible for his taxes. Our job has to be to protect opportunity and to give the people the power to maintain and protect their sovereignty, y'all. We're on this Zoom because we want to be.
Yeah.
I'm done.
Yeah.
Yes.
Tony, you gotta jump in.
Go ahead, man.
Okay. All right. So, we want this to be able to go out to players. So in the chat, you can grab that, but I'm going to read just the topics. Players and families. no matter where you are in the world, you have to have some steps. So whether they regulate or not, you have to have some steps of how you make decisions. So I put in here, number one, which Rob and his son and his family are doing, Rick and sounds like they're doing, define your opportunity. Yes, we have limbs and hands and feet and bodies, and we can play a sport. Define your opportunity, right? Be very specific what your opportunity is. It's not, I walked on to the team. So my opportunity was, let me make the team, right? That's all that mattered. And then every day you go to class, you visit your friends, you hang out with a few people here, but you got to get back to that gym and make the team. Like Rob said, his son, got to get on the field, right? Define your opportunity. And then each time you practice defining opportunity, you get more time in front of you, right? All things being equal, nothing happens to you, you're not losing your mind. We do get injuries, but you don't lose your mind. Opportunity also involves us doing several things. It says the SMART criteria: specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound. Those are the criteria to define opportunity. Number two, assess the landscape. What Jelani is talking about is a big landscape. Let's say you're in a field and the field is 100 acres. You can't see from one end to the other. But if you walk long enough, you will walk across all 100 acres. What did you see? What did you hear? Go to some meetings. Start to participate in some talks. Listen to people talking about all the angles, right? Don't let it be defining. Let it just be learning. The way you learn is called a SWOT analysis. You look at strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So someone tells you, oh, I think you should use this financial person. I think you should buy this financial product. I think you should buy this car. I think you should go over here and get this kind of house. I think you should put your money in this kind of business, pizza place, whatever it is. I think you should go here and vacation in this place or that place. Young men, young women, you have to realize you are the brand. We all know who Jay-Z is. He said it. You're a business. So you have to start regulating your brain that there are certain things happen, not just in American business, in international business, that are functional things you have to incorporate in your personal time and energy. Number three, analyze opportunity and allies. Self-assessment. We all been in school where you have a quiz. Maybe every month the teacher gives you a quiz. Quiz yourself. Find a mentor, somebody that you want to emulate, somebody who's living a life that you think you want to live, and have conversation. Early morning breakfast, 5 a.m, get away from everybody. Don't talk about it. Get away and have a quiz. I had 2 dads in college. I could go to them and talk about everything going on. And anybody that's twice your age is very willing to at least just say, let me listen to this young man, young woman, right? Analyze opportunity and allies. Everybody's not your friend. Everybody's not trying to help you succeed. It's been proven. Most people who engage you and don't know you don't have your best interests because of the world that people are coming from, where they're going. Everybody wants something, so you have to keep your circle tight. Lastly, number 4, develop an action plan. Every quarter, every 90 days, we obviously live in a calendar society where everybody lives from January 1st to December 31st. However you want to do it, you need to have a quarterly meeting. Have it with your parents. Have it with a coach. Have it with a counselor. So you might miss out on a party or 2 here or there. You might miss out on hanging with some buddies and friends. Have that meeting and record it. Have fun with your devices. Record it. You'll feel great one day, and then the next day you don't feel the same. Guess what? If you record it, you're like, wow, what was I thinking about? What made me listen to that or respond to this or go online and look at this? And, take a trip and go on, spring break, and like all kinds of stuff happens in your head when you got all this stuff going on. So make sure you develop an action plan that allows you to slow down. One thing that this SCORE Act and everything else around NIL is doing, it's speeding you up. You don't have to go that fast. Slow down. That's critical. So go ahead, Tony.
That's good, man. Action plan. We definitely got to have an action plan. You know, what are the steps? You know what I mean, in order to achieve, success, and how we can continue to protect the opportunity. And as we go into these last few minutes of this segment of this episode, I want us to shift and think about what we can say to power right now. So if we were in the room right now with the NCAA or with the president or the Congress or whomever are making these decisions, power conference leadership, what resolution can we say or convey to them to maybe have them consider and think about it? Because I'm willing to push this video, man, to whomever it needs to get to. Let them hear some resolution, about how to control this thing. We know that this got to be a bipartisan and compromise. Everyone wants to get what they want, but how can we get it to the point where everyone is getting a little bit of something, but at the same time, the student athlete who is the product, they're not being extorted, right? And their rights are taken away from them as it relates to the antitrust laws that says they are to be protected. I think one of the major things that is at the crossroad is the transfer portal. I think that is a big part of the issue. And Jelani, I agree with you regarding transferring. If a player or kid wants to transfer to as many, places or as many times as they want, I mean, I'm okay with it. And the reason why I say that is because if you transfer, you have to go through the compliance office at the institution. And then they're going to tell you, they make you go through they have to give you like an in-service. They explain to you, now, if you transfer, if you put your name into the portal, you're going to lose this, you're going to use that. They have to do that through compliance. So it's not like you put yourself in and you don't know. They're telling you. So you're going to release and lose everything that you have at that current institution. So it's a choice. You have a choice. So the only other thing, hopefully, with that counsel, that someone's telling them that if you transfer too many times, you're going to have an issue with your credits. So we want you, going back to what, Robert Smith was saying, get your degree, man. We talked about this last episode. You got to get your degree because, your chances of playing, we only have a few years to play this game or any sport or whatever. And then it comes down to now, what was the skills that you developed in order to earn a living and be, that regular, that guy, man, that goes beyond, the athlete, but we go into the other roles that we take on as men and women, in society and then in your community. So I just want that to be clear that when transfers happen, compliance have to explain to them what they're doing, or they're going to be held accountable for that. So you got a choice. But what is the resolution? What is the resolution, that we can say or convey to the powers that be right now on how to regulate that or to make, things operate a little bit better? because this financial thing is really getting out of whack. And I think that it's not the student athlete deals that is the issue. The issue seems to be the institutions themselves on how to budget. I mean, like, they're all over the place, man. I mean, and I know you guys have read and you guys have followed and looked at different demographics and information about various institutions out there and how much money they are in a deficit because of their own choices.
Yeah.
And if you're going to give an offer X number of dollars to these student athletes for NIL deals, then you got to make sure that you're not just relying on the collective to give the other part or these other places you're pulling money from. You got to be better organized in handling your budgetary responsibilities. That's what I'm saying. What could bring resolution to all this, y'all?
So I got some idea, but Tony, check this out since you mentioned that. Athletic department spending, okay? The Ohio State University, taxpayer institution, by the way, between $280 to $295 million in sports. University of Texas at Austin, taxpayer institution, over $270 million spent on athletics. Texas A&M University, taxpayer institution, $279 million. University of Michigan, taxpayer institution, $229 million. University of Georgia, taxpayer institution, over $210 million spent on athletics. The Penn State University, taxpayer institution, over $200 million. University of Alabama, taxpayer institution, over $200 million. Your taxpayers' money is going, and I'm not saying it's a waste. It's when money is being spent in America, what generally happens is it funnels one way up to the already positioned, and 9 times out of 9, that's the majority community, people of European descent. And what civil rights did was it started to say there's a whole lot of us locked out. Yes, the African descendants are the most obvious, but there's a whole lot of people locked out of this opportunity. And that's where all these laws come in, this, that, and the third. You know what I'm saying? So, when somebody says, what would you try to say to politicians and people that are trying to push legislation? We would hope well-meaning people that want to do the right thing. You never know. Is the first thing I would say is that, we want this to be a partnership, because that's really what it should be. Institutions should partner with the families in the communities that are in their vicinity, that are at their institution. And here's how I see it, guys. I see it that the NCAA and its participating institutions provide a platform. That's what they do. They provide a platform by which student participants, young student college athlete participants, can benefit from. They're making the investment in, the TV and all that kind of stuff, the money that I just mentioned. And it provides because that's really what college does. When you go to class for math or for the education, it's really a platform for you to hopefully seize, and as Mr. Smith said, build the skills and habits that you need that can take you wherever you want to go at. So we want this partnership. But what's happening, and Tony, you said, was the money is clouding the issue of really the partnership, where the platform is still there. How do we make it that the individuals involved can take advantage of that? But here's the second part, but still adhere to the basic principles set by the institution. And this is back to what you were referencing, Tony, with when an individual decides to transfer, what does that mean? Credits and whatever else. And of course, institutions drive that. So one of the things that I think should talk about is incentives. What allows you to transfer? what allowed you to extend your opportunity to participate in intercollegiate athletics in that platform, that arena? Remember, we could never create that arena on our own.
Mm-hmm.
Universities do that. Well, to me, that would be what? Earning your opportunity to transfer or to remain at the institution or and have that platform. But nobody's talking about is Tony Coleman, is Michael Respert, is Robbie Johnson. Number one, have they legitimately been admitted and enrolled at an institution? That's the first thing.
Mm-hmm.
Number two, are they legitimately in a degree seeking program? Number three, are they enrolled as a full-time student? That's at least 4 classes worth 3 credits. They've allowed a lot of these schools to tell Mike, you can take 2 classes now, and then so that you have more time for practice. We would say get on the plantation, and then you can take 2 classes in the summer. Like the kids had nothing to do with that. We talk about, I think, Tony, you were telling me and educating me on listen to me, y'all, reclassification in high school. And the young man that just left Duke and played for the Mavericks, reclassify, meaning that, he left early or something like that. And I think he left early because he was like the #1 engineering student in the country. Or no, he was the #1 neurosurgeon prospect. And no, they reclassified him based on sports. Sports. No, well, you mean Cooper, he must have wrote the legislation that allowed him to. No, he didn't. Adults did that for sports. So when I talk to Congress, I'm saying we have to get back to college. Full-time student, properly enrolled, full 12 credits. Now, that means, Mr. Coach, that's going to reduce their spring ball time or their practice time, or I think, Mike, you said it, going out to some hospital that the coach's wife knows and bringing these athletes to go sign autographs. That ain't really their responsibility. We do that in the NBA.
Right.
And people get on TV, oh yeah, the University of Iowa visited like they the NFL team. They supposed to be the hell in class. But we got them going out and building houses. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but this is really for the husband or the wife of the head coach or the AD. They ain't supposed to be doing that. Now, I guess I say it's a bad thing. So what we have to do is get back to, we say student athlete, but we ain't really talking about the student part. You know what I'm saying? There's no report card on graduation. Where maybe you get more NIL money if you can prove that you have athletes who graduated from your program. If we're talking about capping anything, you know what I'm saying? But I've always said to tell the universities to get out of the money business. Universities should not be paying anybody. Mike, if you can go out and get a deal with Ford, God bless you. But I know one thing, you better be in class, you better be enrolled, you better have a C average, you better pass 24 credits for the cycle, or you got to pay all that money back because we're providing the platform. You know what I'm saying? These are the things that, to me, that's where the partnership comes in, where we're really concerned about the student part. Yeah, thank God Robbie and his wife got their son on lockdown and he made the dean's list and all of those kinds of things, But hell, most students don't make the dean's list, so I'm not going to bury a student if they don't make the dean's list. I told you in the last segment, most college students, it takes 6 or more years to graduate. They got to stop sometimes, work, give a semester, sometimes do bad in a semester. And remember, you telling colleges and universities that they got to provide academic support, they got to provide health, and they do that shit already. They've been doing that for the past 30 years. They got accommodations offices for people with ADHD or who need different kinds of IEP support. They got school counselors and psychologists and all of those. So that's not nothing new. What you're really talking about is the money. I'm with you, Tony. I don't mind the student playing multiple years because that's their window.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, what's it? Jimmer something from BYU back in the day.
Jimmer Fredette.
That was his window, man. Adam Morrison from Gonzaga. That was his window. You know, Bailey, some of these other college guys. Like, you know, that was their window where they were great. They are college legends. Doesn't mean they're going to be a legend at the professional rank, but they should be able to parlay that. Look at
here's a name for you, Jelani. Shanghai.
Shanghai, Gannon University. You know what I'm saying?
The average age was 27, 28. Shanghai was 30. But
you know. So my thing is, did he graduate? The guy from that went from Iona to Adelphi, or what was that other school? Had the big hands.
LIU.
Yeah, like James. I mean, but look, did he graduate? You know, and was he really in a program? I think the fear of that, and this is where, to me, Congress and them should get involved, is y'all scared to go up against these PhDs. You're scared to go up against these chancellors. So the easy prey is to beat up on the students and their parents, or to talk about the so-called street agent.
That's it.
I don't care, you know, street agent or not. That's my son. I'm representing him. Yeah. And if you don't want him or her, that's fine. Somebody else does. That's what free enterprise, which America is supposed to be about. Opportunity, which America, that's what it should be about. But I just think earning, you know, and with this, you know, Eric's son Darius has already graduated from Michigan State. Mm-hmm. Now he came up during that COVID time. There's a whole lot of discussion about COVID years and all this. But Darius has already graduated with his degree.
Yeah.
Darius already got his master's degree. That's what's supposed to happen. And to me, if you do all that, you can play another year.
Yeah.
But to me, you gotta fulfill what you're there to do. And if you're right, Tony, to go to one school to the other, I'm okay. How many credits does he have? That's where compliance comes in. How many are going to transfer? You know what I'm saying? Will it transfer into a degree-seeking program? See, that's where the compliance people can come in and see if this is really going to lead towards graduation, or she got basket weaving 101 and golf 8 and all that, and it ain't really going nowhere. And they're really there just to play sports. And even in that instance, you may not be able to stop the student athlete from doing that, because some students just go to school to take a course. But I think if you say, as an association, we're providing this platform, and all that agree, that's the key. All institutions that agree are going to abide by these things. I think you have something that I think is fair. Remember this idea of accreditation and Middle States. Middle States is an accreditation agency. And the institutions all buy into that. Hey, are you accredited? And what that basically means is that there's a set of rules by which we all agree. And those have to deal with enrollment and admission and all those kinds of things, you know. And one of the ones that I always used to talk about in admissions guys was what happens when a student wants to transfer to your institution, but he or she has attended another institution. You all follow me so far? Okay. So now Michael wants to transfer to Tony's university. Talk to Tony. Tony's impressed, would like to give Michael an opportunity. And Michael says, yeah, Mr. Coleman, I went to Saginaw Community College. I attended Michigan State. And then I also spent a semester back, you know, in my hometown at the local university, state school. I've amassed 38 credits, whatever. So Tony says, no problem, Michael. You can apply online because you have over 24 credits. I don't need your high school transcript, don't need your SAT scores, none of that. But I will need all of your college transcripts because, like you said, Tony, you want to do an evaluation. I want to see how many credits you have, which ones are transferable, and then which ones will transfer into a degree-seeking program. Notice the difference. You can have college credits, and you can have credits that are transferable, but not all of them will transfer into a degree seeking program, which means you're on path to something. This is where the compliance comes in, Tony, that you're referencing. Now, here's where the accreditation comes in the association where we're working together. I said that Michael went to 3 institutions. Now he's trying to transfer to yours, which is the 4th. But Michael can only get 2 of the 3 transcripts. Are you following me so far? Michael should not be able to transfer to your institution. You say, well, man, how come you can't get the transcript? Michael owes that one school money. So that institution will not release his transcript. And Tony's institution, as a part of this group, is not supposed to admit you because you haven't followed the rules. That's where compliance comes in. Because compliance can stop some of that stuff if the schools or in this agreement are not following the rules. It's not wrong for Michael for wanting to transfer. It ain't working for him there, or he's got a better opportunity at your spot. But if everybody's not following the rules, so that's what I would be saying to the politicians is to really look at, like you said, the back end, the compliance, not taking away opportunity, but are you transferring the right way? Are you in a degree seeking program? Do you have a 2.0 GPA? Maybe I make it higher. If you have a 2.5, you can get an extra year. To me, these incentives are all things because Tony and Mike and Rob, what we're trying to say is we value, as Mr. Smith said, we value a college degree, regardless of all the rhetoric about how much money it costs to go to school and the concerns about AI taking jobs and, you're wasting time at a university, Mr. Smith hit it right on the nail when we first started out. He said that being in that environment 9 times out of 10 will only positively impact your ability to build skills, to develop the type of habits that you want, and to help you figure out where you fit into your community. That's the thing about the college environment, and the reason why guys like us are so vehemently trying to get as many people. Don't just look at it as a linear, I'm going to get a job. We want to get a job, but you're also building something that makes you a better citizen in society. So that's what I would be saying to the politicians.
That's good. That's good, man. I think that we've covered a lot of ground. Of course, again, it's so many pieces to this puzzle and, segments to cover. And unfortunately, we don't have, the time, to do it on each segment. But we're going to get there one segment at a time, one episode at a time. I appreciate you guys, man, for, again, giving up your time on a Saturday morning to, help us collectively protect the opportunity for our young people and for families out there who are looking for some guidance, looking for some people that may look like us to give some kind of direction and guidance to help them realize or make decisions on how they can move forward and making some critical decisions for their son or for their daughter. So again, I appreciate you guys, man, and we're going to go ahead and conclude unless anyone has any last 30-second comments they want to make before we conclude for today.
Yeah, I got just one thought. If I had to speak to a legislator, and it may not be something that's applicable, but it needs to be a conversation. If I'm a student athlete and I've got 18 waking hours, 6 hours of sleep, 18 other hours of the rest of my day, because we're putting in a situation where I'm being paid, if I'm being paid by the particular sport I'm playing in, I, the athlete, should be able to restrict how much time that sport has of my time. Now, it has to be within reason, right? Six hours of basketball and engagement in the gym, that's good preparation, right? I might go 2 hours in the morning, might have 2 hours of practice, I might go work out. So 5-6 hours is a good amount of time to put to a sport. Every day, it's a lot. If I got to go to class, that's a lot. the off school hours to go sign this, to go to the fan event. Come on now, it's a dog and pony show when you get to where you're telling me I got to stand here and do this and do that, right? So clearly, if the money is being paid to me by a collective, and I know that I'm working for this particular sport, this particular group, this particular department. There's got to be some conversation about time. I don't know how that would work out, but that would be where I would have conversation with finding a way to benefit the athlete. There's got to be a little bit of restriction of time where they do have a way to go outside of their routine and learn life. That's just important. Otherwise, the only filter you have is all the people that are on you. And it's hard to shake them folks off after 365 days a year, people pounding you with do this and do that, go here and go there. So that's my thought.
Okay. Well,
Hey, I just wanted to jump in, Tony, real quick, and just thank everyone for their wisdom. Really appreciate you guys gave me as a dad a lot of different perspectives to consider. And I think it was very beneficial. So I do appreciate the opportunity. So I am going to seize this opportunity and live in the moment and continue to get RJ ready and prepare for success. So thank you guys. Good stuff.
Yeah.
Hey, you're very. I'm glad you were able to come on, man. I wasn't sure you were still able to hear us because I know that you were probably on the road and probably got disconnected because of that. So if there's anything else that you missed, I'll make sure that you get the full recording so that if anything you missed, at least you can listen to everything and what you can take from it.
Yeah.
You can take from it, but you'll have it. And
I was good. I only missed about 30 seconds. I logged off and logged back in, so I didn't miss much.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Continue to be strong for your son, man. It's a very different world than what we all went through. So he'll need you. You're the representation of that kind of man that he's going to learn from your craft, learn from your skill set. So just continue for us to help you. Feel free to reach out. Feel free to get Tony and get us. If you're ever going through stuff as a dad or a man, and you're like, man, what's going on here? Build your mentoring group as well around you, man. And we're more than welcome to support you as a man as you continue to lead your family.
Awesome.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely, man. You guys, we're going to conclude with our exit promo for TGBA, the Total Game Basketball Academy, where we strive our best to help student athletes and families navigate this whole thing that we call recruiting process. And also, once we are positioned and made our decisions, where we're going to be placed, how do we navigate and continue to reap the benefits and maximize the best things for our son or for our daughters while they are at those institutions. Let's keep the opportunities open. Let's continue to strive, support each other, stay connected, and continue to push forward, man, in this thing that we call collaborative education, as well as community involvement and sports in college, high school, and globally. Let's continue to push this thing, y'all. I love it. Yes, sir.
For tuning in to today's podcast. If you know anyone that will benefit from what we share, have them subscribe to our YouTube channel at Tony Coleman TGBA. Remember, on the Total Game Basketball Academy with Tony J. Coleman,